Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we are getting into our verses between the Lego Ghost Ship set number 75357 versus the Razor Crest 75292. So both these sets are very popular. Both of these sets are what I consider, I've coined this term hero ships, because they are the ships. Not only does like the hero ride, or the main character, but they also become a part of the show, similar to obviously the most iconic and first one to ever do it was a Millennium Falcon. But essentially, the ship becomes just as much part of the show or the movie as the characters. It becomes a character. And these are two instances of that in this case, respective to their cast and their crew of who man the ship and the medium that they come from. Obviously, the Ghost has played in two different mediums, but this is coming from the perspective of the Ahsoka show because the cast is reflected of the Ahsoka show. And then here on the right side, we have the Mandalorian reflected from the Mandalorian show. And so yes, Mandalorian had a big boom when it came out. It had a huge fan base because of, it's just kind of resurgence to Star Wars and bringing people back to old school vibes. And you had this ship, the Razor Crest, that became very popular. And once again, like I said, the Ghost had its moment more so in Rebels for people who didn't really know of it from Ahsoka. In Ahsoka, it wasn't really popularized, made popular. But the thing about it is because it was the biggest ship of the known ships in the Lego set, it got the most attention. Now, disclaimer, I'm going to say that I have a couple of modifications to each of these to some degree. Nothing over the top that really changes it for the most part in any kind of major way. And we're going to go down a few things when it comes to our comparison. So we're going to go through things like the figures slash crew, and I'll break down the perspective of what I'm coming that from when I get to each category. But interior, then interior access, which is going to be another thing, a little bit separate of that. And what that's referring to is how easy is it for us to get to each portion of it. Ship design, and then the scale of each ship, and then firepower. That's going to include the guns on the outside, along with the weaponry that they have, as far as their small arm fires, their handguns and stuff like that, in addition to the storage of those guns. So, I kind of went off the things that I kind of wanted to kind of see. So those are the things we're going to kind of compare on. So let's jump into it. So the first thing we're jumping into is the figures and the crew. So first, we're going to jump into it from a figure standpoint. As far as what I consider which ones are the nicest figures. Everyone's going to probably agree or disagree, but I feel that just from, the figure standpoint, um, I think that all the figures inside the Ghost set is nice. And I think all the figures inside in the Razor Crest set is nice as well. But then when we kind of mash up the fact that, okay, we're both getting five and we're getting five. But when it comes to weight, the weight of the characters, so Grogu is really like a quarter of the character, and and they both have a droid. Though his droid is definitely the droid over here. The IG-11 is a lot more um, functional, we'll say, even though they all play a role inside things. But before I get into that, I just realized let me run through the names of them. I'm sorry. So over here, we have on our left, for the crew of the Ghost, we have Chopper, we have Jacen Syndulla, we have Hawkins, we have Beta, and we have Hera Syndulla. And on the right, for the Razor Crest crew, we have Mando, the Mandalorian, Grogu, Reef Karga, IG-11, and a Scout Trooper. Now, going back to what I was saying, as far as just the figures go themselves, I definitely feel that because of Grogu, as great as he is as a character, and he's fitting to the story, he's very tiny. Here, you're getting a lot more. You're getting a bit more in terms. Well, I would say you're getting a bit more in characters. in terms of the weight of the characters, but IG-11, I say outmatches Chopper. And I'm not referring to, like you being a fan of the character who you like better, but just in the weight of the character, this feels more of like an active figure. Whereas Chopper is just obviously like one of those kind of, what do you call them, astromech droids or something of that sort, where he just kind of rides around and really doesn't do much. So in that regard, it kind of makes up a little bit for having Grogu here. But as far as the figures all go, I think they're all nice. You can see the colors on here are a lot more brighter for the Ghost, reflecting almost the colors of the ship, whereas the Razor Crest crew are a lot more just dull and darker colors. So as far as that goes, just on a figure standpoint, just on what you're getting for the figures, excluding the popularity of each character, I would probably say the Ghost kind of has this an edge. Now, if we're going on popular characters, the weight of Mando alone would outweigh any individual character here by miles. So, along with having Grogu along his side too. So we're not going on that basis. We're just going on, what you're getting. Now, when it comes to the crew, viewing it from a crew standpoint, the Ghost also gets it in that regards too. I say that because this guy is really this the Scout Trooper. It really is just kind of like here, but he doesn't really have a place in it. So your actual crew is these four guys. Now, granted, Mando's ship is more of a one man pilot type of ship, even though obviously size wise, and we're going to get into it later on in terms of scale and category, in terms of the way these ships are designed by Lego. But in canon, in the actual universe, it's made for really one person to kind of man the ship, which is what he's always done by himself. And obviously, you have room for extra people to be on it. But I always like to link it akin to almost like a space RV. It's really just his own little mobile home. It's really just for him to fly around. He can hold a little bit extra passengers, but it's not for them to stay on for long periods of time. Whereas the Ghost is made to kind of really be manned by more than one person. So that is the design of the ship. So you have a full crew on hand. No character here is wasted as just a filler character. They're all actually part of the active crew on the ship, not only by Lego standards, but even in canon on the show, this was the crew. So yes, in terms of crew, the Ghost gets it in terms of that. I'm actually going to. No, I was going to skip a category and go into something with the weaponry, but I'm not going to do that. We'll come back to that later on and bring the figures all back out later on, so we can stick within that realm. So we're going to jump right now into. You know what? I changed my mind in the middle of the video. We are actually going to then skip categories. So the categories don't matter in terms of the order necessarily. I'm going to jump from the whole firepower thing, just addressing their guns. We'll revisit that later, but this way I could just kind of do a little in detail in terms of what they come with. And then later on, I'll revisit it in terms of the totality of it. But you see what's laid out here. Hopefully, you guys can see it pretty well. But we have the Ghost crew has 4 handguns and a set of binoculars. The Razor Crest crew has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guns. They're not all handgun size. Some of them are larger rifles and whatnot, but you have a total of 6. So you have 6 guns. And though you don't have a pair of binoculars, but just in terms of the firepower and accessories, now granted, there's some people here holding 2 guns. So, because people like Grogu is not going to be holding a gun. But then again, you have the Chopper who's not holding a gun either. So in terms of firepower, obviously the Razor Crest characters have that one in hand, literally. And later on, we're going to go into the firepower of the ships. So, but just in terms of that goes, accessories in terms of guns and stuff like that, they have the win. Even if you want to count the binoculars as just an accessory, a hand accessory, they still have the win because they have 6 versus 5. Next, we're going to jump into. We're going to jump into ship design. and scale before we end up tackling the interiors. So when it comes to the ship design, I think both of them have a nice design, while the Ghost has more of a. This is going to sound almost interesting. Its more odd shape gives it more of a traditional Star Wars design to it, because Star Wars ships, for the most part, a lot of them are all over the place in terms of their design, while the Razor Crest has more of a traditional, like spaceship or jet kind of design, very more streamlined. If I'm not mistaken, I heard that that was kind of the direction they were going in when they came up with it. It was more inspired by old school fighter planes. I think where you had like the kind of turbine engines on the side and whatnot. So the Razor Crest is more of just a clean design. Not saying like clean in terms of like studs or whatever, but just in a sense of the design itself. The design itself seems to very much be that very clean aspect to it. Just simple, straightforward engines on the top side, wing like, very streamlined, simple kind of just body design, old school, like they said, like the fighter planes, which is very nice. Now the Ghost is a little bit more different. It's a little bit more Star Wars like, for lack of a better word. Just it has this aspect to it and this presence to it that feels like it would be this grand ship. And we're gonna run into scale in a moment, but it definitely, I like the design of it. It's definitely different. It definitely caters to that Star Wars feel, I feel, in regards to that. Now, when it comes to the scale, when we look at both of these here, I'm just going to take a figure. I feel that scale wise, just to the camera angle a little bit, so don't mind my plants at the background in fish tanks. I feel scale wise that I gotta give this, so design. I'm not. I give them both equal because I think they're both nice designs. They're just different. But as far as scale wise, the Razor Crest definitely takes this area, because the problem when it comes to scaling is, so the Razor Crest feels more in scale. Now I know there's play scale and it's not, UCS scale, which is supposed to be quote unquote, the proper scale. But as far as within this play scale, I feel the Razor Crest feels like it's more in line with the size that the Razor Crest should be. You could imagine. I know that this normally is not where he would have the ramp side of things, so don't mind. But you could imagine this is like just a regular size scale for this. He would be walking up into the ship, even the cockpit and everything. It just, the interior of it feels fitting for what the Razor Crest is, which is like a one man piloted ship that has room for extra people. It's not made to be one of those ships that you kind of would walk crazy around in. The actual space in the Razor Crest is fitting to the way it feels in the show. The same amount of space he has in the show is the same amount of space it feels like he has in the Razor Crest here for the scale. While the Ghost, just looking at it, it looks like, if you don't have a figure in place and you're just looking just at the ship, it looks like it'd be this grand, massive ship. Like it'd be huge. And like your average standard figure would probably be more closer to the size of Grogu. Like that's how it feels like a regular person would be in scale to the Razor Crest. I mean, to the Ghost. Like you would be that big to the Ghost. But obviously Grogu is not the regular size figure. He's a small figure. So when you compare them next to each other scale wise, this then starts feeling tiny when you have a regular man next to it. It doesn't feel, take someone from their side. It doesn't feel, when you look at that, it doesn't have this presence about it that makes it feel like, okay, it's as massive as it looks. When you just look at it, it feels massive. At least that's the feel I get. But then meanwhile, when you put a character next to it, it's like, okay, it doesn't have that same feel. I mean, because it just doesn't. I don't know if what I'm trying to explain comes across correctly, but you feel just by looking at this, the design of it, everything, that the Ghost should be probably almost twice as big as this. just in its scaling. So you notice that it's almost a ship that feels like it should be massive and it's not. It'd be almost like if we had a Death Star about this size. You would know just something about the presence of the Death Star between seeing it in media, between its design, that it should be massive. Yet, if it was in this size, it would feel small. So that's how I feel. Sorry about that. Um, that is how I feel about the Ghost. So in terms of scale, the Razor Crest definitely has that. Um, Now, while we're out on the outside here, we're going to jump into external firepower. Um, while we're here, so the Razor Crest has these two cannons here. The Razor Crest has these two. This is where the I don't have them in there at the moment, but your um what do you call these again? Spring loaded blasters, if you will. You have two of them here, one right there, one right there. So the firepower is reasonable. The Ghost has um this rotating cannon here. It has this cannon that goes up and down here, and then you have those same spring loaded cannons down below, right there, and one on that side. So, and in addition, the if you want to call it escape pod, the Phantom has two guns over there, which it actually says in canon that those can be used to blast rear facing in the rear facing direction. So as far as that goes, the Ghost beats it out in terms of firepower. Um, Though, like I said, to some degree, you would expect that, being that the proper scale of the ships, the Razor Crest would be a lot smaller of a ship, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but anyway, so but here within what we're working with, it wins out because it has more firepower. Next, we're going to end up going into the interior the of the ships, along with one of the other categories I was going to get into with the guns, as far as gun storage, because the truth is, both of these are pretty bad when it comes to that. I'll just knock it out the way real quick. The only storage for the Ghost is in the back of the Phantom ship, which would hold, you can maybe squeeze three guns and the binoculars in it, but it's generally designed for, I think, the binoculars and one gun, the gray one. Um, and the Razor Crest, which I have this modded, so I don't have it there. But generally speaking, everyone knows there would normally be two clips here um, to hold two guns there, Mando's guns, I guess. So those two clips there, I took it off to do this kind of little crazy design because I wanted to make a little gun wall. But those two clips would be in this place here. Anyone who's familiar with this would know, and you would be able to hold two guns there. But that's very minimal storage as well. So with that being said, yes, they're both tie in that department. They're both lackluster when it comes to gun storage. Um, Oh, and before we get into the internal design, one more thing we're gonna jump on from the outside is they both come with escape pods. Now, granted, understand too, and there's gonna be link in the description for both of these affiliated links with Amazon. I want to make note that the Razor Crest is $140, while the um, Ghost is $160. So understand there is a $20 difference. This is the escape pod for the Razor Crest, which I'm glad they even come with one. That's, a feature that was never inside the show, so that's a bonus. But this is was definitely utilized in the Ahsoka show. We're just going to speak from the Ahsoka show's perspective because I had never seen Rebels, and this is from the Ahsoka show set. This was definitely used, and it has a pretty big moment in it where it's being used. So, and it's definitely obviously a better escape pod. But you can tell, once again, back to my conversation on scale, that the Ghost is meant to be a bigger scale ship, which is why you have a more fully fleshed out um, additional ship. It's not even really like an escape pod feel. It's almost like an exploratory or explorer craft that's on the ship. So when you have such a big ship that's not meant to be maybe flying around in atmosphere, you would explore with a smaller ship, which is a different concept than an escape pod. But nonetheless, they both represent the same thing within these sets, an additional smaller ship that can be used. So I just want to point that out before we get into the interiors of each ship. Now, going to be hard to kind of see both of these. And then this is where we're going to also go into that category of interior access. So I'll start that while we get into the interior of the ship. Interior access. The Ghost, you pull off the top, and you have access to the interior. I'm going to pull this off as well. So here is part of the interior here. Now, this is not interior that you can really play with much. The different angles so you can see a little better. It opens up here. This is not an interior section you can play with. It's just for you to get your character in it. Let me align this back while I put this back. There it goes. But nonetheless, as far as interior space, this has just easy access to get to it. Now, granted, it doesn't have more space, but it, let me move this out the way. It doesn't have more space, but it definitely has easier access to that space. It's all in one area for you to kind of reach and get to. Like I said before, in advance, I did customize things a little bit where this would have just been empty space. I put like a bed type of setup along with, or a couch type setup, bed type setup, along with, I took the pillars that used to be here out of the way. So I had a little bit more room to play with. Now, with that being said, it's a minor customization, so don't think too much of it. The space, the available space is actually, I want to say, less than the Razor Crest, because the Razor Crest has its main portion, which is its cargo area over here, is going to fit almost the same full length. I counted up the studs and the width, but yet you still have separate from that its cockpit, which is a little more spacious. And then it's below the cockpit, you have the bed areas on the side, which we're going to get into, which then adds additional space beyond what this has, as just opposed to the cockpit and the gunner area there. We're going to jump really quickly into the Razor Crest real quick, take a little quick glimpse of it. You have your 2 seats there. This back piece was really just for gun storage, so it really doesn't count as anything in terms of usable space. I'll try to angle this in a way where you guys can see. I want to do one side at a time because holding this is a little tough. So you could see here, anyone who's familiar with it, you have this entire lower deck area, which will be used for cargo, general storage, just kind of his walkabout area when you're walking around, because you really want to walk around the cockpit area. And then right here is just really like weapon storage for these, for the missiles. Now, the thing about it too is this could be also used for regular gun storage. In that case, it gives a bonus for regular gun storage, but technically the missiles is what goes here, so that's why I didn't want to count it for regular gun storage. But that's what that area is, really a cargo area. So if you really wasn't using that for the gun storages, for the missile storages, you can put other things in here. It's a 2 stud wide area, so you can throw things there if you needed to. Nothing crazy, but you can have a little bit of cargo that you want to store there. Obviously, you can't see the light very well. Let me see if I can bring this down a little bit while still holding this, because it's hard to hold while I'm doing this. You have that. This is the, what do you call that again? The cryo carbonite things, but we're not really going to jump into that because that's not going to be part of the interior space. That's what we're really focusing on here. If you just need to see little details like that, the review was already done. But you have that as far as its interior space. And then on this side, you have the bed area, which, like I said, is a great additional space, which gives this thing in total space more, because the main area you saw on the Ghost is actually equal to this space here. Sorry about the lighting. Can't get a lot of light inside here, so I'm trying to angle this. But that whole, let me try to zoom in a little bit. Okay. That whole area down here is the equivalent in length, maybe one stud longer, I believe it is, but is the equivalent in length about 17 or 18 studs, both of these in terms of length. And the width is also like the same, about 8 studs wide. But the thing about it is in the Ghost, that's the main area. Well, this, it is kind of the main area, but these additional areas like in the front where you have the sleeping area just gives extra space. So the Razor Crest has a little bit better in terms of space, but not by much. But I still will give it to the Razor Crest in total of its space, because in total its space is considered better. Let's see if this thing is flush in here right now. Okay, so these panels don't always line up. So in total, when you're looking at it from that perspective, what you have is there. This one's cargo space versus this one's main space is about equal. This one has its front seat and its gunner seat. This one has its 2 seats, which is equal to that. Then this one has the 2 spaces on the side, which is not much, but it's the sleeping quarters, excuse me, and it's a storage area, which then puts it slightly over the top in terms of interior space. Now, so that's covering the general space. I'm sorry, that's covering the general space. Now we're going to get into um, cockpit and slash control spaces. What does that mean? Meaning that it's a place where someone can man the position, something that's functional for a person to, when they're doing their duties, they have a spot to be at. And in that area, the the Ghost actually wins out because, like I said, the Razor Crest is designed for really one person and obviously some space for some other people. So generally speaking, sorry about that. You have 2 seats here, which is really just made for Mando and maybe one additional person. You have space around. So you have a bed. So what I'm going to say is this: I'm going to give credit to that bed and say, okay, you have a space for someone to sleep while 2 people are sitting in the cockpit to kind of maintain for, a position of something active to do um, while they're on the ship. So that means 3 spaces you really have that are for functional activity. Where you're sitting and you're manning a space. And even though I know the bed is not really quote unquote a space to man, but being that it is a laying down area, I'm going to give it some credit for that because it was designed for a person to be at. So I'm going to give it that credit. But so in total, we have 3 positions like that. We're not going to include the escape pod because the truth is the purpose of this escape pod is to escape. It's not necessarily for you manning a position. Now, on the Ghost, you have the front gunner area, the main, the captain's seat, which I put a chair there, but the truth is that she would be sitting there anyway. So it's not like a thing where, General Syndulla sitting there, whether there's a seat or not, there's controls there. So it's meant for her to be sitting down. And in the set, she would sit down. They just didn't want to squeeze a chair in it. So don't mind that I put the chair as an upgrade. It's still a position. Now, I put a seat here. Let me move this out the way so you can see this. I know it's a little bit hard to kind of see. I put this inside there. Now, hold on. Let me adjust the lighting. Okay. Might help a little bit. So I put this seat here with that control panel, but I got to give credit to it because if you see this little gray station right here, normally that control panel is on top of that gray station for those who are familiar with this build. And it's a station where you stand on this little gray platform and you would be manning that. So it's a standing position to man, but it's still a position where it's a control position where a person would go to when they say, all hands on deck, you run to your station. That is one of your working stations. So I give credit to that spot, even though I changed it up personally to make it a little different. It's still a station to be manned. So right now we're looking at 3 stations already. And then in addition to that, you have The ghost, I mean, I'm sorry, the phantom, which I feel is a manned position, because if you are going into like, say battle or whatever the case is, it's an active position where you can run the guns facing backwards. It's a position to be in. It's still considered like part of the ship. It has more function than, say, the escape pod on the Razor Crest. So I feel in total you have 4 positions, and obviously with a crew of 5 people, one of them's a droid. He doesn't need to do anything if we didn't need him to. But guess what? We still have a position for him, because you can take his head off and plop him onto this. For those who know, I'm not gonna break it down right now, because I know we're running short on time. We're running long into the video, but you could take his head, plop it down there, and it mimics the idea that he is sitting inside his little compartment on the Phantom. So even he has a spot to be active in when that comes to the case. So the whole crew can be all hands on deck if they need it to be. So I think that's very much a thing. Sorry about that. Whenever I don't have the top on this line, it's hard for me to line this in without the top. So in terms of stations and everyone manning their ship, the Ghost wins in that. Now, granted, like I said before, the Ghost is a proper crew, while the Razor Crest is more of really a one-man pilot. So technically, there's all spaces and hands on deck for Mando to do his thing. Unfortunately, his is really a one-man ship designed for just him. So, or maybe one additional person, but it operates differently. So for that reason, the Ghost is winning in that department as well. And so that pretty much covers all the aspects of the ships. Um, this is not really like a kind of verse where we're going to really kind of just be like, oh, these are the points that add up. It's really just me pointing out certain categories and whatever you feel. But obviously, whatever ship you like is what you're going to like best. Um, I think if you're in the mood for, say, take away the fact of fandom, take away the fact that you might be more of a fan of one show than you are of another. And you just want to look at it from the perspective of, okay, I want a ship. I just want a general ship to buy, and I just want to play with that ship. Which one am I going to go for between these two? If you want the space cowboy who's that renegade and is doing his own thing, just on the ship design and the figures that come with it, not even from a standpoint of the story, the Razor Crest is fitting of that, because even the crew is not really a crew. It's more of Mando's ship and a few people are on it. So if you want that kind of cowboy who's has his little space horse and he's having fun, you would go with the Razor Crest. If you're more in the mood for a ship design that is like this kind of big ship, even though it's not super big, but what it's supposed to be representing is this big ship that has, a crew on it, a full size crew, and they all have a position to play. They all man the ship in some way or another. They all have things going on. The Ghost is the ship you would go for. And like I said, granted, it's not as big in scale as it should be to depict that feeling, but nonetheless, it still is that ship, and that's what it's doing. Yes. So one thing I forgot to mention on this, and this would have kind of came into the play of access, was how the Ghost has those little areas, those what's the word I'm looking for? Not decks, but cargo doors, for lack of a better word. I'm having a brain fart right now, but yeah, for access, even though you can't really make someone run inside there because it's like a little tiny box, like a window frame, so they got to kind of duck and slide in. But nonetheless, it gives you that. But yeah, so that's really the design. If you want a full size crew feeling, you would go with the Ghost. If you want like a kind of space cowboy setting, you go with the Razor Crest. Either one is a great buy. From my understanding, the Razor Crest is not going to be around much longer. So if you want to jump on it, jump on it. But the Ghost is the new kid on the block in terms of Lego sets. And so this is one of those things that I also don't even think will go on sale anytime soon either. So if you want to jump on that, that's fine. It's definitely a good one. So with that being said, you guys, I'm going to end the video here. I know it's been a long video. Link is going to be in the description for both of these, for the link to Amazon, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.